If a person robs you on land, they are a thief. But if they rob you at sea, they're a pirate. Let's say it's 2007, and you're the captain of a cargo ship traveling off the coast of the Horn of Africa. You're transporting wheat from Kenya to Saudi Arabia. When you look out at the ocean and you see these guys, they come at you quickly, just a small speedboat of them, and soon they're right up against the side of your ship. They're about to throw a ladder to climb up. You run into the ship's citadel or safe room and you call the Coast Guard. Or maybe you try to spray them with this water hose to scare them away. But it's too late. They've now climbed on board. They're rounding up the crew. They're going to hold you hostage and demand a ransom of millions of dollars for anyone who will pay. The shipping company, your home government, your family, doesn't matter. And if you don't give them the money, you'll be held in captivity, starving, maybe even tortured, for days, weeks, months, even years.
If there's no answer to payment of the ransom within 3 days, then the kidnappers here will sell me to Al-Shabaab.
This happened hundreds of times. This is what a typical hijacking in this region looked like in the early 2000s, where by the end of the decade, hundreds of piracy incidents were reported every year, and they were still just getting started. So let me show you how the Horn of Africa became the epicenter of modern-day piracy, and how what started as Somali fishermen defending their waters turned into an organized criminal network. This is the rise and fall of Somali pirates.
Off the Somali coast where those pirates attacked that vessel.
You're dealing with irrational people.
If they back this boat against the wall, I don't know what they are able to do.
Okay, little sidebar really quick. Yes, I'm wearing my orange jacket inside because it's kind of cold in the studio. Anyway, one of my least favorite parts about living in the internet age is how tracked I am and how tracked we all are. I spend a lot of time on the internet, and when I do that, all of my data, all of my browsing behavior, my purchase history, my address, my social security number, my location history is scraped by some shadowy company and put onto a list and then bought and sold in an open market. This is why my inbox is chaos, why my phone is always blowing up with robocalls, why I'm constantly being marketed to and sent stuff to my house that I don't want. It's a nightmare, and it's getting worse every year. People's data is being more and more exploited, not just by marketers, but by recruiting companies and financial companies and risk management companies and people search sites so that people can search you. It's like not cool. Luckily, we all have rights to get ourselves off of these lists. The problem is no one's gonna spend the time going through the bureaucracy to actually get yourself off these hundreds of lists that you are probably on. And that is where Incogni comes in. Incogni is the sponsor of today's video, as you probably have gathered, and I'm very grateful to them for sponsoring the video and supporting our journalism. But also I'm grateful that they exist because I didn't know about them until they came to sponsor a video, and now I'm a super fan. You sign up for Incogni and you give them permission to go out on your behalf to take you off all of these lists. When I signed up for it, they were able to scan and see that I was on dozens of lists, over 100 lists, and they were able to show me what lists I was on. It's all on this nice looking dashboard. And then the best part is you get to sit back and watch Incogni do all the work for you. Go and fight to get you off all of these lists. Sometimes that's as easy as just a little request that they do and they get you off the list. Sometimes they get pushback from the company and they will do that fight for you until you are off that list. And you just get to sit back and watch it happen. I'm really glad that they invented this because it has been getting out of hand. Like, we love the internet, it's great, but like this data exploitation thing is getting out of hand. And I swear someday we're gonna look back on all this and be like, that was the Wild West. For now, Incogni is a great tool to protect you and protect your privacy. So there's a link in my description. It's incogni.com/Johnny Harris. Click the link, you help support the channel, but you also get 60% off their annual plan. Why do you need an annual plan? Because when they take you off a list, inevitably, if you continue to use the internet, you'll end up back on that list. Incogni constantly monitors month after month to make sure that you stay off of these lists. Soon, your inbox will not look like pure chaos. Your phone will quiet down, mine sure has. And you can rest easy knowing that your data isn't just out there searchable by any corporation or person who wants it. So the link is in the description. Thank you, Incogni, for sponsoring the video. Let's dive into this big topic of pirates. Pirates aren't one thing. They've always existed. As long as there's been international trade on the ocean, there have been pirates. Sailors who utilize the expanse of the open ocean to rob and steal and run sophisticated businesses. If you haven't seen CGP Gray's deep dive on pirates, go watch it. It's a two-parter. Pirates are everything from Norse sailors who raided other ships on the high seas, to the famous pirates of the Caribbean like Britain's Blackbeard, who stole a French slave ship and souped it up into the ultimate pirate vessel. Pirates were poor men who were looking for money and social mobility. Some of them were looking for fame and glory and power in a time where seafaring men had little status or opportunity in society. We've romanticized them, we've caricatured them, and we idealize them as legends and myths of the past. But piracy never fully went away. It still very much exists today. Here's a map of all the piracy incidents over the past 40 years, at least the reported ones. From Indonesian pirates hijacking cargo ships in the Strait of Malacca, to Bangladeshi pirates holding fishermen hostage in exchange for ransoms, all the way to West Africa, where Nigerian pirates steal oil off huge tankers and sell it on the black market. But most of the dots on this map are right here, the gateway to the Suez Canal, one of the busiest highways of global trade, off the coast of a country where piracy uniquely could thrive. The government of Somalia collapsed in the early 90s. The country fractured, and instead of a central government, local clans started to control patches of the country. There was no real government to regulate this 3,000-kilometer coastline, the longest coastline in Africa. As a result, huge fishing boats, mostly from Iran and Yemen, took advantage of this free-for-all, swooping in to these unregulated Somali waters to fish. These foreign fishers would steal hundreds of millions of dollars of seafood every year with nets that tear up the seafloor, destroying the ecosystem and depleting the fish stock in the process. This illegal fishing by foreign vessels started to outsize the catch of locals whose water this was. Local Somali fishermen with their tiny boats couldn't compete, and soon this illegal foreign fishing eclipsed the catch of local Somalis. Around the same time, companies from Switzerland and Somali's former colonizer Italy were illegally paying corrupt factions of the Somali government to take their toxic waste, some of it even being radioactive. Tons of this waste ended up in both Somalia's land and water, which would go on to have significant effects on the health of local communities. So, it's the 1990s, and between the illegal overfishing and the waste dumping, Somali people's main livelihood is being pillaged by foreigners, and they don't really have a government to help them out, to protect them. So some Somalis decided to fight back.
An American cargo ship taken over by pirates.
Somali fishermen got together and they formed an ocean militia. Some would call themselves the Coast Guard, and they would use these tiny boats to chase down foreign fishing vessels and demand that they pay a fine. Some experts have called this subsistence piracy, because it was piracy, but it was also kind of fishermen defending their livelihood from predatory foreigners. And at first, it was rare. I mean, if you look at the data, you just see a handful of successful incidents every year. Oh, and they were pretty basic too. Like in one of these early incidents of Somali piracy, back in like 1994, you got this wooden boat full of 26 Somali men claiming to be the Somali Coast Guard. And they go up to a shipping vessel and they get on board. They like hijack it for 5 days, but realize they can't really do anything, so they just steal as much as they can from the cargo ship and just go on their way. Yes, this was piracy, but it was super basic and kind of harmless. It was a bunch of locals filling in on the power vacuum left by their non-existent government. And this is how it was for a long time. Loosely organized gangs of armed Somali men climbing aboard cargo ships or fishing vessels, intimidating the crews to collect fines, or sometimes asking for informal license fees for fishing in their waters, even though they didn't have any authority to give out licenses. They did it to get money, to basically be like, if you're going to fish in our waters, you need to pay us. And the rest of the world didn't really know about this. It wasn't big enough news for anyone to care. But that would soon change.
Across the region, 80,000 people are dead. At least 22,000 of them were killed here in Sri Lanka.
So there's kind of a turning point. Christmas 2004. This tsunami was devastating, mostly in Southeast Asia, but it also hit Somalia's really delicate coast, destroying homes and boats and crippling an already delicate economy and food supply.
The tsunami took the lives of some 150 people in Somalia and poisoned the precious little water supply the people had here.
And it also washed up some of that toxic waste that had been dumped off their shores. This led to a UN investigation, which concluded that the waste was likely causing severe damage to the health of local people. And at this point, Somalia still isn't one country. There's some parts of the country that are peaceful and safe and under government control, but most of Somalia is still a patchwork of competing clans and warlords, a hotbed for terrorism and organized crime networks that control different parts of the country. And piracy, this thing that started off as an informal coast guard, was maturing in sophisticated ways. By 2005, you start to see pirates using motherships, larger ships that allow them to go way further off their coast, and then to use speedboats to attack like they did to this cargo ship. This was a huge level up for Somali pirates. These motherships started to be equipped with radar, which allowed the pirates to have new ways of detecting their prey. You start to see them have GPS systems or satellite phones to communicate. Pirates start looking at shipping industry blogs and databases to locate and track shipping vessels. This was turning from basic subsistence piracy to something more sophisticated. Pirates started to realize just how much money and value was flowing through this corridor, headed towards the Suez Canal, like one of the busiest highways of international trade in the world. And with these new and improved tactics came more profitable business models that would change everything for pirates.
Police in Finland say the owner of the missing freighter Arctic Sea has received a demand for a ransom.
It was the early 2000s, and it was the beginning of the era of ransoms.
You were kidnapped by Somali pirates, and you were held hostage for more than 2 years.
Hey Michael, it's Johnny Harris.
Hi Johnny, good to hear from you. How are you?
So we had a really interesting conversation with this American journalist named Michael Scott Moore. He was kidnapped by Somali pirates and held for almost 3 years before being released for a $1.6 million ransom.
The people say, oh, but they're just frustrated fishermen. They're not. They were in the 90s, but it was a much bigger deal than just fishermen turning to piracy.
Ransoms changed everything. Pirates were realizing how easy it was to hold a ship hostage and to demand a multi-million-dollar ransom to extract a huge profit, which attracted the attention of warlords who saw a business opportunity. Warlords now wanted to fund hijackings, like this one where pirates were hijacking a Ukrainian coal ship that was traveling from South Africa to Turkey. They could hold it hostage and release it only in exchange for $700,000, which is what they got. Or another instance where pirates riding on speedboats captured this Japanese ship and its 20-person crew, holding them hostage until somebody coughed up $2 million. There was investment in these pirate operations because there was a return to be had. And by 2007, around 30% of the world's pirate attacks occurred within this circle. But wait, let's keep this in perspective. This actually wasn't particularly high. If you look at a graph of all of the other regions of the world, you'll see that this wasn't by any means an outlier. But watch what happens the next year. This line going up represents the expansion of the piracy industry in Somalia. There was way too much money to be made here, and warlords were getting better and better at investing in and running pirate businesses. By 2009, this body of water off of Somalia was home to nearly half of all piracy incidents on Earth. And look at this graph of the average ransoms paid. In 2008, the average ransom was $1 million. A total of $30 million was paid out that year. And you gotta keep this in perspective. These were